How many times have you been caught yawning in the classroom during a long lecture? Yawning is such a common phenomenon. Why do people yawn? Yawning is a response by the body when the brain detects low levels of oxygen. When the oxygen level is low, the body has to increase its oxygen intake. A yawn can facilitate this. Our body gets its normal supply of oxygen by the process we call breathing. While carrying out our daily activities, we are hardly aware of the fact that we are breathing. But this process of taking in oxygen and giving out carbon dioxide is very important to our body, and many different organs are involved in carrying out the process efficiently. These organs together constitute the respiratory system. Let's check what organs altogether constitute our respiratory system. The human respiratory system consists of the nasal cavity, nasopharynx, larynx, glottis, epiglottis, trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, lungs, and diaphragm. Let's take a closer look at each of them. The nasal cavity lies above the mouth. The nostrils are the openings to the nasal cavity. The nostrils and nasal cavity are the point of entrance and exit for air. The nasal cavity opens into the nasopharynx. The nasopharynx is a route for the passage of air. The glottis is an opening between the vocal folds and the larynx. The epiglottis is a thin flap which covers the glottis. It prevents food from entering the larynx and instead directs the food into the food pipe. The larynx lies at the top of the trachea. The larynx helps in sound production. The trachea is a tube-like structure. C-shaped cartilaginous rings keep the air passage open and prevent the trachea from collapsing when the air pressure decreases. Fine hair-like structures called cilia, which line the trachea, filter the air that enters the lungs by removing dirt and microbes. The tracheal tube divides into two bronchi. The bronchi enter the lungs and branch and subdivide to form a network of bronchioles. Bronchioles terminate into tiny air-filled sacs called alveoli. The alveoli are the site of gas exchange between lungs and capillaries. Our lungs have millions of alveoli, which help to increase the surface area for gaseous exchange. Some special features of alveoli make them efficient at gaseous exchange. These are a thin, permeable membrane, a moist lining, a large surface area, a good supply of oxygen, and good blood supply. Can you guess how smoking affects our respiratory system? Our lungs are protected externally by a covering called the pleural membrane. The pleural membrane is double-layered with a fluid between the layers. This fluid allows the lungs and ribs to move smoothly against each other during inhalation and exhalation. The diaphragm is at the bottom of the rib cage. It is a muscular wall that separates the chest cavity from the abdominal cavity. Breathing is the mechanical process which results in the passage of air in and out of the lungs. Let's learn how our respiratory system carries out the process of breathing. Before that, observe this experiment. Why were the balloons inside the bottle being inflated and deflated? When the rubber layer at the bottom of the bottle is pulled, the pressure inside the bottle is reduced. This creates a difference in air pressure inside and outside the bottle. As a result, air rushes in and the balloons inflate. On the other hand, if you push the rubber layer inwards, the pressure inside the bottle increases as compared to that outside. This causes the air to move out. The balloons now deflate. The rubber layer in this setup represents the diaphragm. The space inside the bottle is analogous to the thoracic cavity, and the two balloons are like the two lungs. As in this setup, breathing also works on the principle of difference in air pressure. Breathing is carried out in two stages: inhalation or inspiration and exhalation or expiration. Breathing in is called inhalation. During inhalation, air moves into the lungs. Let's see how this happens. Inhalation starts when the muscles of the diaphragm contract and flatten in shape. This pushes the abdominal viscera downward. Simultaneously, the external intercostal muscles, that is, muscles present between the ribs, contract. This causes the ribs to move upwards and outwards. The chest cavity expands. This reduces the air pressure inside the thoracic cavity. Consequently, air enters the lungs from outside via the nostril, pharynx, larynx and trachea and the bronchi. The air finally reaches the alveolar region, which is richly supplied by blood capillaries. In the alveoli, oxygen diffuses into the blood and carbon dioxide moves from the blood to the alveolar region. This completes the inhalation process. During exhalation, carbon dioxide-rich air moves out of the body through the nasal cavity. Let's see how this happens. Now, the muscles of the diaphragm relax, and it returns to its domed shape. Simultaneously, the external intercostal muscles relax, bringing the rib cage back to its original depressed position. These changes cause the volume of the thorax to decrease, which in turn causes the air pressure inside the thorax to increase and causes air to leave the lungs. This completes one breathing cycle, and the process starts anew with the next inhalation. Why do doctors recommend breathing exercises to get relief from fatigue?